I can explain the current Democrat strategy and how they landed on it. Not because I agree with it, because I do believe that they need to adjust, but because I think I understand the reasoning. I don't think it's inherently the wrong choice, but I do think it's proving to be not the right one. They're up against a couple of things. The trap was pretty much laid for them years ago. And I'm not gonna come after them for not using power that they don't have. I wanna be really clear. They actually don't have any power to stop this. They just don't. They don't control either chamber of Congress, nor obviously the executive branch, which is in charge of enforcement. They are trying to stop pieces of it the only way they can, through the courts, but unless they start working with Republicans, which none of us want them to actually do, they can't actually do anything on their own, except for obstructing and delaying. They cannot stop what's happening unless they start breaking the law. And the reason they're on their best behavior is because they don't want to give him an excuse to declare martial law or anything like that. As soon as they also start breaking the law, all bets are off. As much as we're seeing the system breaking down before our very eyes, they're not trying to give them the excuse to accelerate it any further. Do I think they could obstruct more? Absolutely. A lot of us already understand that. However, we still want to see them fighting for us. Be a thorn in their side. Make this as difficult as possible. We want to believe that if we somehow manage to put them back in power, they're gonna come in and fix everything. They're going to be our champions. Herein lies the really big problem and the trap. Number one issue, the tactic is flooding the zone, overwhelming us with news and distractions so we don't know where to look. So Democrats don't want to help them flood the zone. They don't want to be another distraction. Number two problem, most people in this country have no idea how things work. Sorry. Which is why Republicans will blame Democrats for legislation that they pass. Donald will complain about a disastrous trade agreement that he himself signed. They believe him. Republicans will literally brag on the news about passing legislation that they themselves voted against. We've seen this. So Democrats need to make it abundantly clear to anyone who glances their way that they have nothing to do with this and bear none of the responsibility. And they're like, we're powerless. They're hoping that the disaster will speak for itself, and it will in many ways. In essence, it's kind of a form of FAFO. They're hoping that the right will fall on their sword. I keep saying that the best thing the right could do for us is to crash the economy before they successfully dismantle the entire system, because that's the only way they'll actually get any pushback from their own. Number three, the idea of triggering libs fuels the right. Fuels them. I have people in my comments cheering on crashing the economy to trigger the libs. So what Dems don't want to do is to seem triggered, because it'll actually help them. And this is the hardest part, because we want them fighting. We want them making noise. If what they do can be spun as being triggered, then it'll actually serve as affirmation for a lot of the right. Even as the economy tanks, they're told, yeah, this is that difficult period at the beginning that we warned you about, but look at how triggered the libs are. That means we're right on track. It's the perfect way for them to reassure themselves in their beliefs, even as things fall apart. So Democrats are trying really hard not to give them that gift. This is why, by the way, when I gave a bunch of suggestions last week on how else they could have disrupted the joint address, the goal of all of them was to seem less like reactionary triggered lib and more organized opposition. What Dems are doing is falling flat because they haven't figured out how to strike a balance yet. Hakeem Jeffries like standing up and going like, what can we do? You're powerless. Yeah, it makes the Dems look weak and powerless to everyone who's gonna like look for someone to blame, but it also makes Dems look weak and powerless to us who want fighters. There's a way of getting that message out there without saying, we're gonna just lay down and take it. We're not meeting the moment. The last thing is the one piece of leverage that's coming up for Democrats is the debt ceiling. Republicans actually need a handful of Dems to raise the debt ceiling. And no matter which way Democrats go on this, they're kind of screwed. If the debt ceiling doesn't get raised, we're basically completely done. In the past, Republicans have used this as leverage to get a bunch of things from Democrats. Even though they are the ones who raised the deficit and they are the reason the debt ceiling needs to be raised, they always manage to blame it on Democrats. They point at them and say, oh, they're raising the debt ceiling. Oh, that's because they're spendthrifts. That's not how it works, but whatever. They use it to their advantage. If Dems don't agree to help raise it, not only will it be way worse than the crash we're already expecting, they will get blamed for it. All the economic woes coming up, they will get blamed for it. And if they do agree, they will get blamed for helping raise it. And it means that the one piece of leverage they have isn't really leverage. So they can try to get some concessions from Republicans on the budget, but Republicans are trying to crash the economy, clearly. And they're gonna be happy for the excuse to blame Democrats. Beyond that, and this is the big one, it could be used as an excuse by the executive branch to take away the power of the purse from Congress because they failed in their most basic duty, which is exactly what they're trying to do and would be the end of our democracy. So personally, I think they should agree to raise the debt ceiling, let Republicans crash the economy on their own, because that is depressingly the best hope we have for getting out of any of this. unfortunately. And yes, they need a much better strategy. They need to look like they're giving us a fight, not a tantrum. You know, Bernie Sanders puts up a good fight, and I don't think he's ever been called a triggered lib.